So let's look forward 1 year to 2026. A micro drama on a short form video platform has broken global streaming records with 1 billion streams. A self-represented actor involved has signed a contract for a modest buyout fee, which included giving up all their exclusive rights to the producer. Given the series' massive success, what can be done to secure fair royalties and remuneration mechanisms for performers for the use of their work in on-demand streaming? And I'm going to ask Taiba to talk a bit about some of the work that Bex is doing to kick us off on this one.
Thank you. So to start off with, the streaming angle has become such a big issue for collecting royalties for throughout the world, to be honest, because what Bex does is we go out and make agreements with countries all over the world that says, if you're showing my members' work, you need to pay us for it. Now, the difference between the UK and the rest of the world, mostly, apart from the US and Australia, which is slightly different, is they have what we call a statutory rights mechanism, which means you have the right to equitable remuneration. So every time your work is being shown in that country, we can go out and collect monies for you. And this is all over and above your contract. So the particular, particularly to streaming, we now have agreements with Chile, Peru, Colombia, Spain, Italy, where Netflix is now paying an additional amount of money for showing your productions in those countries. And this is all over and above your contract. So what we're trying to do is obviously, we're lobbying the government, we're getting our members to support us in lobbying the government so that you don't only just have exclusive rights in the UK, you have this right to an equitable remuneration, which means you benefit as long as the producer is benefiting from your work. And that's something that we're working on quite significantly and lobbying government and trying to get that as changed. The other project that we're working on is what we call the Smart Fund. I know some of my members are here, so you might have already heard about it. But the Smart Fund is equivalent to like a private copying mechanism, where if your work is being copied and you're not benefiting from that copying, then what we're saying is that's not right. You need to be paid for your work being copied. So if for example, it doesn't really relate to streaming as such, because streaming is a licensed product. And so what we're saying is, when it comes to private copying, we're like saying, if your work is being broadcast on BBC, for example, and somebody goes and tapes it, or puts it on DVD, or puts it on a USB stick, and then uses clips from it and puts it on, I don't know, YouTube or something, as long as there's a non-commercial aspect for it, then that's called private copying. And the Smart Fund is going to replicate systems that are already in place in more than 43 countries around the world, where any device that can be used to copy has a small levy on it, and that levy is then passed on to the creatives. And the Smart Fund in the UK is being called the Smart Fund because it started off during the Conservative era, where they didn't like the word levy, so we tried to call it something different. But what it essentially is trying to do is to say, we will get these monies for all the creatives and pass it on to them. And then we will also have a small pot which can be used to fund that. In the last panel, we heard about how, the lack of funding for so many things, people are struggling to get into the industry and so on. So that fund is going to actually help art schools and drama schools, etc., to bring in more creators into the industry.
As agents, what more would you want to be seeing to be done to capture the benefits of the exploitation of performers' work going forward from 2025 on?
I think it's really important that actually any kind of financial capture is actually in the original contract.
Yeah.
I think that's what we have to go back to. So when we're renegotiating, whether that's a pact contract or whatever it is, that the mechanism is already there. So it's fully transparent from the get-go.
So seeing the original exclusive rights in the contract.
Yeah,
themselves.
yeah.
I think the difficulty, though, is that the technology is moving so quickly that by the time any of us actually wrap our heads around here's the content and this is how far it's going out, the horse has bolted. And so I think with all of this, it boils down to everybody being a little bit more transparent with one another, having conversations, and actually putting their hands up and going, I don't know. So can we all collectively try and find, because otherwise we are constantly playing catch up. I think that Netflix is a really good example of the industry being able to see, and I'm not using them as the whipping child here, but the industry being able to see what they were doing piece by piece, eroding the residual payments, eroding the rest of the world buyout once upon a time. It was glorious when it was like, here's 35%. You knew exactly what was going on with that rest of world buyout. It was like, that's a transmission, thanks very much. And then the mechanism kicked in. Netflix came in, started to take people off one by one, clever little sods that they are. Mm-hmm. And before any of us really understood it, that was the norm. And so suddenly you now have this content that is up on their platform for the rest of time and for whatever technology they deem to sort of evolve into. The unfortunate truth is that a lot of the actors that will be involved in this microdrama short form are likely not to be represented. And the producers know, and again, not using the producers whipping children, but they will know that. And so they're able to sort of go, here's a really shiny, exciting experience for you. If I don't understand what the contract says, and I've been doing it for 20 odd years now, how is a drama student meant to understand what that contract is and what they're signing over?
Kelly, balancing exclusive rights and equitable remuneration, how do you see that playing out into the future?
What was quite interesting was Tabor talking about the smart fund and that sort of projected mechanism that they're trying to put in place. Grows, for some of you who have been around as long as we have, seems to grow directly from something that used to be called the rental and lending right, which was a blank tape levy against a tape, a physical DVD, a VHS, and that copying mechanism where people could copy Star Trek and keep it on their thing at home forever. And what's interesting about it, what we can do now in order to make way for that smart fund to give us the space to breathe and see that income, is to stop waiving the rental and lending rights in the contracts that we're signing today. So look in your rental and lending clauses and make sure that you are retaining that now, because that then makes way for what they're building at Bex. That's what I thought when I heard what Tabor had to say.
And just before I bring you back in, Tabor, Ross, I mean, you've been thinking a lot about the kind of technological ways in which these rights can be enforced. Do you want to talk to us a bit more about what you've been...
I try not to confuse people, and I'm going to be like the bad guy up here, because I know like AI is the thing that we're just not allowed to mention right now. It's like he who shall not be named. But I've been thinking about this smart fund, and I think like genuinely this could be a really great way to remunerate like actors, whether they're reps or not actually as well. I think that the proposal, or you know what's in the brief there, is you would add a 1% levy to any device basically that you can stream this stuff on. So if you're on Instagram, you're on TikTok, and you know your device is your iPhone, your Android, your iPad, there'd be a 1% levy, even laptops, which I calculated last night briefly. It's a £10 fee on a £1,000 laptop, right? We'd roughly generate 250 to 300 million pounds a year in this country, just in the UK. That'd go into a pot. And then, has anyone uploaded their show reel to YouTube and you've been hit instantly with a copyright strike going, oh, I recognise this scene from Hollyoaks, you're not allowed to, you know, put that, or we're going to monetize it. There's what's called digital fingerprinting within video. So these platforms already have it out there. So they know that this, whether you download it, change the music, change the colour on it, create any derivative, that fingerprint can still be picked up by the algorithms on these platforms. So what we need to do, and this probably might have to be done at contract level, or you know, with a potential kind of milestone to be hit if the actor's going to get paid out, is we can ultimately tell this invisible fingerprint who the actors are within this material. It can go out there online. You can do whatever you want, stream it, download it, mime to it on TikTok, whatever. It doesn't matter what you do to it. We're going to know who's in this footage effectively. And then we have something called the blockchain, which don't want to blow people's minds here and like go, what is this? But we can deploy what are called smart contracts onto this blockchain. People might have heard of Ethereum and Bitcoin. That's the blockchain, but if Ethereum is a blockchain, Ether is the cryptocurrency you might have heard of. We deploy these smart contracts onto the blockchain. Everyone here, Bex would probably be the custodian of a digital wallet for every actor. I know this is probably like quite complex, but once it's set up, it's easy. And then all that happens is the big platforms, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, they automate, because their algorithm and AI can see all of these videos going out. They compare the actor in the footage to the clip that's out there. They can say on this smart contract, when we hit 1 million views, 10 million views, 1 billion, like in your example, pay out from this smart fund, this digital wallet, I don't know, 3 grand, whatever it would be. Obviously, you have to come up with the terms for that. It can be entirely automated. AI can see every single video that's out there without human interference. The interactions are immutable, so which means that they cannot be played with. You can't fake the system. They can't be tampered with. And then we all get paid out like we do. And I love Bex when I get my 17p from EastEnders every few months. We all get paid out from that 250 to 300 million pound fund.
But you wanted to come in on something that someone else had said.
Yes, I think your contracts are your contracts. What if you've been paid for something? What we're saying is it's unfair for you to have to value your work before you know how successful that work is going to be. So what we're saying is we don't want to touch the contractual stage at all. What we're saying is we want the government to introduce a statutory right to remuneration, which then means we can then go and say, okay, the government has introduced this statutory right. We go and speak to the tech companies. We go and speak to the Netflix, the Amazons, and so on. And say, okay, you now have to pay us so that we can then pay on to our members. And that's the difference between having contractual agreements as opposed to having a statutory right, which means as long as your production is being shown, you will benefit from it.
Okay, we're looking 1 year further forward to 2027. This is a topic that's very dear to my heart, having spent 17 years at Equity. And Equity in the 90s secured this dual status for actors. That means actors are self-employed for tax and they're workers for employment rights. Now, what's going to happen as the current Employment Rights Bill goes through Parliament and becomes the Employment Rights Act is the government has said they want to simplify things from this 3 status of self-employed, worker and employee to 2 statuses, self-employed and worker, which is the new employed category. And the danger is in doing that the dual status for actors could be lost. And that dual status means that actors are recognised as people who are building small businesses, that you have costs as you're building a small business, which can be set off against your tax submission. Whether that's your gym membership, your head shop fees, or anything else you do to build up your professional career. And if there is a sole category of worker, that yes, there may be some extra employment rights benefits to that, but all the ability to offset your expenditure against tax is going to be lost. So there's a balance to be found. Clearly, if the cost of becoming an actor is not tax deductible, that is a net increase in expenditure for actors and could act as a barrier for new and emerging talent as well as existing talent to enter our industry. The question is, and it's a question we pose government, will you protect the dual status? And we've not had a clear answer from them. But I'd really love to hear from the panelists about whether protecting that dual status really is something that is worth us as an industry fighting for. And I'll come back to you, Ross, as an actor to kind of kick us off.
I think it's really important. Honest to God, like I think there's a lot more education needs to be given to actors entering the industry anyway. I try and do a lot with my accountant. I'll do sessions on Acts on This with my accountant, really highlighting the fact that I think a lot of actors here probably won't even know that if they register as self-employed now, regardless if you're making any profit in your career at all, if all you're doing is spending money on, obviously an Act on This subscription, but Spotlight, Equity, your acting classes, if you're just amassing losses, it doesn't matter. If you pay tax in your pay-as-you-earn income job, you can absolutely offset that tax relief against the tax that you're paying as long as you register as self-employed. Now, I don't think a lot of people even know that. I know the guy from Streets, is it? The people, they were talking about that this morning. Every actor here, a lot of people think it's only when they're profitable they should register as self-employed and treat themselves as a business. You should do it from day one if you're taking yourself seriously, because you're literally leaving hundreds of pounds on the table. Now, if actors can't do that because the dual status disappears, it's just another financial barrier in the way. And I get it, you will get employment benefits if they get rid of it and you just become employed. You'll get statutory rights to holiday pay and that sort of stuff. But when you're starting out in your career, you're very often the day player who's going in for a day, 2 days. Like, holiday pay is not really even a thing. You're only there for a couple of days. You don't need to take 28 days holiday off your 2-day job. I I think that the costs of getting rid of it far outweigh the benefits. I would fight, vehemently to keep the dual status.
Kirk, do your talent know about the dual status, do you think? And is it something that as an agency you'll be voting to protect?
I think that there is a common misconception with the general public, and I'd almost had as a guess with the government as well, that if you're on the television, you're earning pots and pots and pots and pots and pots of money, right? And for the vast majority of people, that is absolutely not the case, right? However, if we're just looking at the commission that every actor pays their agent, if they are not able to offset that against their tax liability, and looking at people who are at the higher bracket here, if you're paying 45%, if you're fortunate enough to be paying 45% tax, add on that at that point, you're probably paying near enough an extra 20%, 22% in commission. Because if you're earning that much money, you've probably got a UK agent, a US agent, a manager, a lawyer. All of these things cost money. If you're not able to offset that commission against your liability, you are paying out nearly 70+% of your salary.
And Kelly, I mean, one thing I was going to ask you is performers' rights, which are something that are in performers' contracts and to some extent derive from that self-employed status.
Yep.
The risk of losing those through this process is profound.
I think some of that is quite alarming. The idea that you become an employee changes very much the inherent. This is really boring for those of you not interested, but it changes the inherent copyright ownership of the creative work. So if I'm a nerd and I develop an app and I work for Apple, it's not Steve Jobs anymore, is it? Because I'm getting old. It's Tim something or other, right? They own it, right? If I work for Apple and I develop something clever, Apple own it because I'm an employee. Well, if an actor becomes an employee, then ITV own it. And this arrangement we have, now we've talked a lot today about contracts generally and that they are complicated and in some cases very unsatisfactory. But what is true is the copyright vests with the owner of the thing. And if you are employed, you're an employee, you have no status or you are not invested in the copyright. And at the moment, the dual status allows the artist to license their work under a 7-year term or whatever the arrangements are. And we've talked about all of that not being perfect, but the nature of that is the artist retains their vested copyright in the work and then they hand it over under license, under their contract, for the production to put it together. If you become employed, they just own it. And then we potentially run into all these other problems about our royalties are gone entirely, because they're not licensing it, they just owned it because you created the creativity under the employment thing. So dual status, I think, yeah.
Okay, let's move forward one more year to 2028. Let's imagine a scenario where the voices against self-tape have become predominant. We've scaled back the number of tapes. More people are being seen in the room, but the room is in a kind of geographically centred place. That place is often London. At the same time, the cost of living is going up, and the cost of train tickets from somewhere like Glasgow to London has hit a delightful high of £350 if you're buying it at short notice. That just means that if you're not based in London, auditions are in London, that's going to cost increasingly more amounts to be seen in the room. There's also a possibility in the next few years, if you read the opinion polls, there may be a new government in place who does not champion diversity, equity and inclusion, and is not interested in either the arts or a diversity of voices in the arts as well, or the cultural output of the sector. So what can we do to protect ourselves against that, David?
I think being in the room at perhaps a recall stage is absolutely vital. So I think somehow we've got to kind of support that, whether that's through production budgets or if you live so many 100 miles from London where the production can have a pot to say, listen, we can help you out with that. But I don't think there's any easy solution really, But I think it is vital to actually be in the room at that kind of recall stage.
Let's stick to the self-tape question first, and then go into the kind of possible kind of government policy changes going forwards. But when self-tapes first came about, they were all about promoting equality and inclusion, getting people who weren't in London seen for jobs that otherwise they'd have to travel for at their own expense. Yeah. Has the tide really turned amongst your clients in terms of the value of self-tapes, or are they seen as a double-edged sword?
Right now, I think that there's the hustle to get people a self-tape. I think that once upon a time, right at the very beginning, when self-tapes were all the thing, it was, you could literally just go, there's the list, just, have everybody do a tape and we'll sort of see what happens. I like the fact that more thought is going into it now, and you've still got to do the hustle. Does it make things a damn sight easier? 100%, because actually, you're not doing the back and forth dance of, can you do 4 o'clock on Thursday? No. Okay, when can you do? But, there is an ease to it. But does the ease make the process better? I don't think so. I think that there is, if you have somebody who is not within the M25, then yeah, there's a place for it. I don't think it should be the norm, though.
And Ross, you're an actor who's not within the M25.
I'm going to champion the North, yeah. I'm lucky, to see within the Acts on This community self-tapes genuinely change the trajectory of people's careers on a weekly basis. People getting opportunities within Europe that they wouldn't necessarily get based in the UK if they had to travel there to audition. Someone just landed a role this week on is it a remake or a new version of the Hunger Games or something? It's her first job, got this tape, it's like, oh my God, it's changing the trajectory of my career. So I think, they're really, really good. What I am seeing though, is casting directors potentially getting a bit bored, because like we say, they're probably only watching the first 10 seconds. They've got quite a lot to watch. They know whether they've got the thing they want or not. And I think sometimes actors can miss out there. But I'm seeing more and more casting directors that I interview saying, we're coming up with a bit of a hybrid model. We're going to let people choose. So Peter Hunt's big on this at Hollyoaks. Kelly Valentine-Henry's just been redoing a room in London for in-person castings. And they're saying to people, look, do you want to come in or do you want to tape? Or if you really don't want to tape and you can't come in, if we can find space to do a Zoom, we'll even do that with you. Sometimes for first round stuff, which is pretty, which is pretty nice. And the hit rate, apparently, from what casting directors are telling me, the actors who do choose to come in, don't beat yourself up if you can't. They are booking more if they do choose to go in. They're building some of those relationships. So I can see, pros and cons to both. I don't think there's a perfect scenario. But with regards to this, in terms of how can we help people outside, of London in different regions? I'm lucky in Manchester. There's a lot of stuff going on in Manchester. It's kind of, a second city in the UK. A lot is going on in Scotland, though. There's roughly, I think on average, there's around 34, 35 shows have been made in Scotland in the last couple of years. Big stuff as well. The government have got a value add of a target of £1 billion to be spent outside of London and Manchester, up in Scotland. We've got big shows like Shetland, Granite Harbour. It's a shame River City's gone, but Outlander. The North is getting better. I think we just need more, more of that. And other regional hubs like Birmingham needs a little bit more of a.
It's the same with Wales and Cardiff, and you sort of see all of these media cities sort of coming up, which I think is incredibly, incredibly exciting. And actually, I think that to a certain degree, for casting purposes, you are now legitimately able to sort of go, would need to be a local hire because we don't have the budget to travel people, up and down. Just really interesting. Just doing a tape, would you view doing a tape as being seen, as from an actor's perspective? Yeah,
in terms of, I there's a lot of things I love about tapes in terms of, I'm a bit of a geek with the tech. So I love the control, I can frame it, I can light it how I want to potentially enhance the performance. I get to go again and again. Sometimes you do overthink it, you do 22 takes, you have to go to bed and go, I have no idea which one to choose. None of it makes sense at all. But I find that the more you do it, the more you have consistency with a reader. If you can buddy up with someone, whether it's on Zoom or it's your in-person mate, who will always be there with you and can see the evolution of your tapes, that for me has been a game changer in terms of direction in the room from someone who's seen my last 20 tapes. And you just, you evolve. And for me, it's like, how do I get 1% better every tape? And you don't always book, but I do feel seen. I definitely do feel seen. Whether they're lying to me or not, I don't know. They do say, we watch your tapes. And I've had it go where it's not gone my way, but I've had some casting directors feedback through my agent say, we just passed this on. We really appreciate Ross doing that, like at the last minute. You know, maybe it's just like a 12-hour turnaround. I know Equity are kicking off about that, but I'm just happy to be seen right now. And I think if you do a cast a favour by taping at the last minute, you know, you do a good job consistently, they will keep seeing you. And if opportunities do come up in the room, you're going to be top of the list to get in, I reckon.
Now, Kelly, you also have the ability to look at the London scene from outside. What more could we be doing as industry to support actors and performers who are not based in the capital?
Can I not answer that?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm gonna just be devil's advocate just for a minute. I think we talked a lot, or I do, because it's a lot of what I do, talk about work on camera. But I don't think we should forget the idea that part of what is this industry's history is an enormous theatre footprint, generally speaking. And I think the decentralisation of our industry won't entirely help us if we decentralise the West End. It is a huge global tourism business for this country, and I'm a great advocate in reminding people when they get coiled up in the art. I'm a great advocate for reminding people that this is a business, and it's a multi-million-dollar business at the very top end of it, and the West End is part of that. So for me, I do want people's financial status, people's class status, not to prevent them joining our sector. Of course I do, so a self-tape, if you can't travel, is great. But I think equally, a total mental position of decentralising, certainly for theatre, it doesn't work. The West End is a thing all of its own. It's an export all of its own. Stratford-on-Avon is an export all of its own. So in that way, I think the conversations are a little different whether you're talking about camera work or theatre.
I just want to turn to the other part of the initial question. And Toby, I know you also talk to government and politicians, civil servants quite a lot. Should we be concerned about the possible direction of a future government and its protection of the arts?
In one word? Yes. Unfortunately, I think the current government, I had a lot of hope when the current government came in, but they haven't delivered. And I'll give you an example. We've been fighting for the Beijing Treaty, which is a treaty that is a WIPO treaty. World Intellectual Property Office has put together this treaty that the whole world has agreed on to protect audiovisual performers. It was signed by the UK in 2012, but it needs to be ratified and put into law before it actually makes any difference to us. 2025, and we're still fighting for it. We thought that the current government would have, they actually said in the last 2 years ago, they said, yes, we're working on it, we're going to push this through, we're still fighting for it. Okay, given AI has taken up a lot of their time, but this is something that happened before AI. Let's fix problems that we can fix before we start looking at,
Let's move on to 2029 then, one further year into the future. And research by the broadcast regulator Ofcom has shown that changing viewing habits in the UK will soon see YouTube as the primary channel. Already younger viewers, those aged 14 to 25, see that channel, YouTube, as their main content provider. And research suggests older viewers are also moving that way as well. Public service broadcasters are losing advertising revenue through some of the changes around less healthy foods and potentially other areas that might be embargoed in terms of advertising. And a lot of that advertising is moving to online platforms instead. And the impact on what will happen to audiences, children's programming and drama could be the first to go with that loss of advertising revenue. So how do public service broadcasters evolve to meet audiences where they are? And what can we do to ensure the survival of that public service ethos? And indeed, should it survive? And the question, I think, is, should we abandon public service broadcasting altogether or not? Who'd like to step up first in defence of public service broadcasting?
The industry is in one shape or another having to go back to go forward again, because we've seen the erosion of advertising, full stop, and the damage that has done. And everybody back when and everybody's doing it. 4OD, ITVX, it's sort of any subscription-based service. Back when they were getting all of us to sign up, oh, sod the commercials, sod the advertising, we don't need to worry about it. The money's flowing in. That's all starting to flatline now. I think that public service broadcasting, I think that what we do in this country, we do it so unbelievably well, and it is so vitally important. And actually, there's a lot of emphasis on what are the younger audiences watching. Do you know who I'm most concerned about? My mum, my grandmother, because they're the ones that I can almost guarantee what they're going to be watching tonight and watching tomorrow, right? They're the ones that younger audiences will all grow up. You just look at the idea now of the binge watch and how we all got really, really excited about the fact that you could have every episode of Schitt's Creek available to you, right? I love nothing more now than having a weekly drop and it become an event. And this is what I mean. The advertising question, public service broadcasting, streamers, the industry is having to go back to go forward. So advertising will come back in some form, I think.
And Kelly, public service broadcasting, is it chasing the wrong set of eyeballs, or are we fixated on answering the right questions?
I'm going to say let drama get in the marketplace and fight for its place, and then I'm going to say let the public broadcasters do the things that I'm interested in, a documentary about space flight, and that you're interested in, a thing about baking, and that you're interested in, a thing about sewing, and then stay out of the marketplace for drama. It's a personal thing for me. I'm really out of step with our community about public service broadcasting, I'm afraid.
Ross,
really out of step.
as an actor, Ross, does it make a difference to know that there are public service broadcasters who will experiment, or is it just a commercial decision for you?
Kind of yes and no, really. I just always believe the market is the market is the market. Ultimately, people are going to pay for the content that they want. And to a certain degree, I mean, I don't want to say this because I'm an actor and sometimes I'm in commercials, but I think TV commercials sometimes for businesses and for marketing can be some of the biggest waste of money in their budget. Because like you say, when the Bake Off adverts come on, you're making a cup of tea. Yeah. You're not watching them. So I'm like, well, that's my star. I'm starring in this advert. No one's even watching it. So for me, I'm a big believer in meritocracy. Genuinely, I'm like, the people who make the best content will end up getting my dollars. I do subscribe to YouTube Premium. It's $12.99 a month. I am paying YouTube not to watch their adverts. So I'm funding that business model. We all pay for Netflix, and if you pay for it, you don't see the adverts and stuff. So for me, again, I'm just like, there's a reason why people are hooking up with HBO and Netflix and Amazon and stuff. It's not all the way, it's not funded in the same way that it was. And I think we've just got so used to going, I can choose, to pay for the content I want, and then I don't have to pay for the content I don't want. I think that's probably the way that it's going.
On to the final year. We're going to look forward a full 10 years to 2035. And we've talked about some of the things that could be perilous over the next decade, but I want to just kind of end on a high note. So looking forward to 2035, we've seen increased investment in the UK. We've seen jobs going up in the UK. We're building a new Hollywood in Elstree and Boreham Wood and places outside of London. Next 10 years, something to look forward to or not?
Yes, in terms of we will always want content. People always want to tell stories, and we have to just make them and get them out there.
I'm excited for the next 10 years. I think it's sort of, I wouldn't be sat here if I wasn't.
I do think there may be a shift in quite how many production companies there still are functioning in 10 years. There may be some changes. I think we have to be prepared for that. We have to pivot. But actually, we've all been here a very long time. We're quite good at pivoting. We're quite good at it, but we do need to keep talking so that we can be ready to pivot. Because I do think we're looking at some changes over the next period.
What I can see is the UK's creative industry, especially the acting world, is so highly respected around the world that we have to use that as our lever. We have to use that as our power, and we have to get government to support us. And that's a huge opportunity just right there.
I think we've probably got through worse downturns than this. And we will always find a way through. Everyone is on the same page. Everyone just wants to make great content with great people. Life's too short. He just wants to work with great people telling great stories. I think ultimately we'll always find a way to do that.
Please give it up again for the panel for this afternoon's session.
Ask you to leave for dinner.